Price is king, it's where we belong. Stay with the dream, don't lose your way. Right way's the fire that'll light the day. Keep it simple, let the moment arrive. 3-8 trap keeps the hope alive. Hold on tight till the signal's near. Right way's the trail, we're breaking through fear.
Good morning, fellow traders, and happy Friday. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for August 15th, 2025. Well, I hope everyone got a good rest, ready for another busy, wild day. We've got Warren Buffett revealed a position that he had been building secretly in United Healthcare. A big pop-up here in United Healthcare is pushing the diamonds into new record highs this morning. So haven't been able to do it during the day, but overnight we got her done, and a new record highs coming in the Dow this morning. Let's take a look at other markets here and see what happened overnight. First off, Asian markets had a pretty darn good night. We saw most of those markets higher. Australia moved up $64.80. Whoops, just a second here. That is 0.73%. We saw the Hang Seng, Hong Kong, was down 249 points last night, or 0.98%. South Korea was higher by $1.29, or 0.04%. The Nikkei zoomed back up last night, 729.05, 1.71% in the Nikkei. India up 11.95 at 0.05%, and Shanghai up 30.32, up 0.83%. If we take a look at European markets this morning, European markets are green across the board. The DAX is up 65.30, or 0.27%. The FTSE is up $1.42, or 0.02%, and the CAC is up 51.90, 0.66% this morning. Now, if we look at U.S. futures here, we have an interesting mix. The news on United Healthcare driving the Dow up sharply. Right now, Dow is up 289 points even. We've got the S&P 500 futures up 7 points, and the NASDAQ futures currently down 23. So interesting morning shaping up here on that news. If we take a look at what we've got going on here in bond prices have been moving up since that number yesterday on the producer prices. We've got the 2-year bond 3.73%, the 10-year bond up to 4.29%, and that 30-year bond coming in at 4.88%. Looking at the U.S. dollar here this morning, the dollar is moving back down. We saw that trying to push back up yesterday and trying to hold on here to this upside trend, but this morning a little bit of bearishness coming into that U.S. dollar. Right now down 36 cents here this morning on the U.S. dollar futures. If we take a look at what is happening in precious metals as a result, we have gold just a little bit higher here this morning. Right now, gold futures are up $2 after a pretty rough day yesterday. $3,384 an ounce on gold this morning. Silver futures this morning continue to move lower. They're down by 20, almost 21 cents at 37.86. We look at SLV continuing that pullback here in that chart. Still holding in a relatively bullish upside little trend there, so keep an eye on it. Copper is also just slightly lower here this morning. But when we when we take a look at these copper futures or COPX miners, we popped through this resistance up here. Now we're starting to lose that here just a little bit in COPX. So keep an eye on copper, down less than a penny here this morning. If we take a look at platinum, platinum is also pulling back here today, down $10.20 an ounce. If you take a look at platinum in here, one of the things you do want to recognize is the possibility of this bear flag could still come into play. The fact that we broke that downtrend does give us a little hope that we can hold that area here and pop through that resistance, but this resistance right now is proving to be a little bit strong. If we take a look at palladium, palladium also in that bear flag type of pattern here, looking a bit bearish, albeit that it's got some pretty good support underneath. But right now platinum is showing down $18.20 an ounce in the pre-market. Let's take a look at how this is affecting cryptos here this morning. Well, we've got IBIT pushing back up after a real ugly day yesterday, down over $4,000 a coin. This morning we're trying to pop some of that or grab some of that back up. $708 a coin here this morning on Bitcoin. Ether is also a little bit higher today after pulling back yesterday, but there is absolutely nothing in that chart that is bearish whatsoever. Right now up $87 a coin or 1.91%, looking pretty good and green across the board in those cryptos here this morning. If we take a look at what's going on in oil, well, oil pushed up yesterday and now we're easing it back here today. It was a pretty good day for oil yesterday, popping up. Remember, we've got the Trump-Putin conversation that's going to be happening. I believe it's today. Yeah, I'm sure it's today in Alaska. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. We could expect some movement on this. I understand there's going to be a press conference after they're done discussing. So be prepared for that possibility. I don't know what time that will be. As a matter of fact, I don't think they know what time that will be at this point in time. So kind of keep that one in mind. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in, let's buckle up, let's get ready for the Friday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these index charts, see if we can figure out how we might want to approach the market for today. Remember, we want to look at these charts for what they are, not for what we want them to be, and really shake off that bias. First off, here in the diamonds, well, at this point, there's no way to look at this chart without seeing just raging bullishness as we push on up and breaking new record highs here in the diamonds. So blue sky above in the diamonds. Now, with this big gap up this morning, if the bears were to have anything to say, and we've got a lot of data coming our way this morning, so if the bears were to have anything to say, a pushback here to test the high of yesterday and this gap that could be filled would be the first thing I would be watching carefully for if the bears were to engage in any way, shape, or form. And if they find additional energy to push on back, we'll start progressing back down through these levels here in the chart to see if we can hold this upside trend. Remember, we still have this big gap in here yet that could be filled if the bears were to really get going. Now, if we look at the SPY, SPY just wavered in there a little bit on the SPY, but then at the end of the day, after that bad PPI report, we just bought everything right back. Everything just reversed. We didn't care about the higher PPI, and everything just pushed back up. So watching that carefully, you can see we pushed back up and nearly Well, no, that's not true. We pushed through and made a new record high close in the SPY, and then we're making a new record high here at the open on the SPY, gapping up. So watch that carefully here today. Bulls definitely in control on the SPY. Blue sky above, there is no resistance up there. And if the bears were to have anything to say, well, let's start looking for these levels in here if we find any bearish reason to push back. This is an extraordinary run to the upside on really weak market breadth. So watch that carefully. If we really start to push back, we could move pretty quickly here in the chart, and I would look for some of these levels like this in the chart, and maybe even just the upside trend being tested, because it's just constant stretch to the upside. Now our QQQ, some of our big tech giants softened just a little bit yesterday, and we weren't able to push this one all the way back up into new record highs. And you can see maybe just a little tiny bit of bearishness here today. But what we do want to look at is if the bulls find inspiration here today, I think there's every reason to believe that we could push right back up through this area. Wouldn't take a whole lot to get this market inspired. Just a couple of those big tech giants pushing real hard could get the Q at new record highs here before the close of the day. However, if those bears were to find anything in here to push this back on, let's look right in here, see if we can hold yesterday's low in here on the QQQ. And if that were to fail, I'm going to suggest coming right back into that area. Price support could hold us. Of course, if we go any lower in here, we're probably looking at some of these price action levels in here for that pushback in the chart. But honestly, the way we're looking here this morning, unless we get some pretty bearish data, we might just rest in here and go sideways. If we take a look at IWM, IWM took a little bit of a break yesterday, but after selling off on that bad PPI data, we just really largely ignored it in the market. Pushed right back up. You can see we're trying to get a little bit going here this morning with a tiny little gap up. So if the bulls can continue with that bullish energy, let's see if we can break back through this resistance here that we popped just Wednesday, to see if we can pop back through there and maybe start pushing back up toward this high of Wednesday. So I would watch that. Breaking beyond that point, if we got higher than that, well, we've got some good upside targets that we can start shooting for. Remember, we're a long ways away from all-time highs here in the Russell. And once again, after such a big move up in a couple of days, maybe we just need to rest a little bit. If the bears were to come up with any inspiration here in the market, and you can see our upside trend here, if they were to push back, I would suggest that possibility that we could drop into this gapped area here. Yesterday we filled that and bounced back up, but you can see pushing back into, whoops, I didn't draw that very straight, but as you can see, pushing back into that area really wouldn't hurt anything at all in IWM. Pushing beyond that, we could test this upside trend. So very, very bullish overall in the Russell. If we take a look at our VIX, well, our VIX popped up with some fear yesterday on that PPI number, but then we just sold it right back off. We don't care. And push this right back down. So if those bulls can continue to find that inspiration, I'm going to look for a break of this recent low here in the VIX and start looking for some of these additional areas of support in the chart, perhaps coming down into this area here. If the bears were to come up with anything in the data today to push back up, well, I would say maybe this high up in here could be tested, and maybe pushing on up into this area of resistance if that were to fail. Remember, we've got this downtrend here in the chart that we've got to deal with. Breaking above that area in here would probably create a little bit of fear here in the morning. But we're certainly not seeing that in the diamonds today. The diamonds at this very moment, diamond futures up 307 points here at the moment, continuing to climb in the pre-market. If we take a look at our T20s, our T21-22 indicator in here pulled back yesterday. We had more stocks declining yesterday than going up, but they pushed on all of those big key stocks, continuing to make the that selling on the PPI just came right back, even though still the majority of stocks were selling off just slightly yesterday, but pulled back here. So with this occurring here on that pullback, if the bulls have anything to say, perhaps like the United Healthcare reveal on Warren Buffett, we could push right back up here into the bearish reversal zone. And we've seen lately that Fridays are a big party day here in the market for the bulls. So I can't rule that possibility out that we could just pump right on back up here and be up here in that bearish reversal zone early on this morning. And if the bears were to have anything to say, I really couldn't rule out this either, that we, from this big stretch, we find something in data that trips us up and we start pulling back and we start to realize that that PPI number is a pretty bad number. So watch that carefully here if that were to be the case in the chart. Now, if we take a look at our T2108, I got to tell you, the T2108, they pulled back yesterday. There's nothing bearish there. We pulled back. We ran right up in here, testing, almost got up here to 60% in the chart. Pulled back just a little bit here, so we've got really good price supports underneath this T2108. Although we saw that selling yesterday morning, we shook it off. I mean, we just shook it off like it didn't really matter at all. So watch that carefully here. Good support underneath if the bulls can continue to push, maybe breaking through this area and possibly pushing up in toward that 70% area, and a very, very frothy area of the market if we can get up there. Now, T2107, T2107 also had a really good day yesterday, pushing back up after that big selling in the morning that pulled us back. We just shook it right off, pushed right back up. So we've recaptured this area of price support in here, and I think there's every reason to believe we could be testing 50% here this morning, and maybe even beyond that, pushing right on through toward this 55 area up here. I will warn you that where we look at about 70% as being really frothy in T2108, T2107 is up here in the 60s, where we get into a very, very frothy situation in T2107. T2101 saw breadth improvement yesterday. Notice we got this little tiny turn in that we pushed up in here. Remember, we are still into a big area congestion and we still have this downturn going on in breadth. So if the bulls are going to get this done today, we need to continue to see that follow through in breadth here this morning to the upside. And I'm guessing with the big push in the YM here today, the Dow futures, that we could easily see that occur. But watch that carefully, because this breadth has been pretty sensitive here, and if we get a pullback in that breadth, well, after popping through to new record highs in the diamonds like that, we might see something in the data that whipsaws us here. And if that breadth does not follow through, watch for that potential whipsaw reversal. They finally got it done in the diamonds, and then you might see a little bit of selling coming into play. So watch that carefully. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today. And our economic calendar, well, we've got a few things on here to be watching for. It's going to be our busiest day of economic data. Retail sales, certainly a market moving number. They are suggesting in retail sales by consensus that we get a little bit of a decline from a 0.6 to a 0.5 at X vehicles month over month, coming in at 0.3 from a 0.5. So watch that carefully in here. If we happen to see that decline a lot more, that could have market impacts here. And if it comes in better than expected, once again, we could celebrate here big if those consumers are continuing to spend hard here in the market. Empire State Manufacturing numbers, they're expecting those to decline from a 5.5 to 0.5. That's a substantial decline. But as we've seen over the last few years, as long as AI is fine, we don't care much about manufacturing. So that may not have any impact, even though that may be pulling back. We've got import-export prices. They're looking at those import prices on the consensus is staying flat year over year. Looking at that to stay flat at a negative 0.2. Export prices, however, they're looking at that to change from a 0.5 to a 0.1, seeing that decline. It is possible that we could start seeing some impacts here on import exports with all the tariffs and things. So watch that carefully if some of those numbers were to miss. Industrial production is our next market mover. In here, they're looking for industrial production to decline from a 0.3 to 0.0. Staying flat on the manufacturing output and capacity utilization. So keep an eye on that today. Business inventories in here, they're looking for those inventories to increase just a little bit. So watch that carefully. Usually that is seen as a bearish indicator. If retailers are picking up or businesses are picking up inventory, it often means that they're having trouble selling it. So watch that carefully here on that today. And then consumer sentiment, which is of course one of those numbers that can move the market if we get a miss in here, but they're looking at that sentiment to improve to 62.1 up from 61.7. So with all this data in here today, guys, if we find any kind of stumbling point, watch that carefully. It could move the market pretty quickly with all this data. And then we've got a Baker Hughes rig count and a Treasury International Capital here today to be thinking about. Now, on the earnings calendar, we don't have much to worry about at all. As a matter of fact, the only notable that I have this morning is for Flower Foods here. And again, it's not particularly notable. There's a few other stocks reporting in here, like FUFU will be reporting today. Nice little gap up here, but it usually trades a very small volume in here. It's getting a big pump up this morning on that report. JSDA will be reporting today, and you can see an 18-cent stock. MLSS reporting today, 59-cent stock. So we've got a bunch of little tiny small caps in here reporting along with FLO. The only notable really in here is FLO today. So pretty light on that economic or earnings calendar. Let's take a look at a few stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if you can do me that quick favor once again here, I know it gets monotonous day after day after day, but if you could help me out, if you haven't seen these videos, please do me that favor and click that subscribe button on YouTube, and also click that bell icon when it pops up. And if you feel that this video is worthy, if you guys could just click that thumbs up button and leave a brief comment. Remember, even an emoji counts as you're engaging with the video. Thank you so much for everyone who does take the time to do that. I truly, truly appreciate it. Let's take a look at the stocks that could be setting up. Remember, everyone, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to do your own due diligence and be very, very careful in this market, realizing that we're quite extended in the short term, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to extend. So stay with the trend, but make sure you have a plan to protect yourself if suddenly we get something that reverses us in the market, because the point moves could be substantial. If we take a look, I put an alert here on WDC. This was brought up once again by one of the members of the room. You can see I've been paying attention to this for a while, but they asked me how would I set something up here on WDC, and I said I'd place an alert right there in the chart, and if we get enough bullishness that pops up through there, I think that would give us enough potential energy to follow on through to the upside. So keep an eye on WDC. Hanging in there just really strong. I really like the way Rig is set up here. Rig popped my alert yesterday, and I didn't do anything with it yesterday, but watching this closely as it moves out here toward this upside trend. I think Rig, it's a little cheapy guy, but I think there's a pretty good chance that we start pushing up here in this. And if you remember, this administration is all about drilling for oil, so watch that carefully in here. If that gets that bullish push, I would be watching that pretty closely. Taking a look at Abercrombie here. Now, Abercrombie, I thought this was going to hold in here, maybe push on through. That volatility yesterday in that PPI number sent this lower, breaking some support. So before this can turn into a bullish chart, this needs to recover some of that support. It may actually start showing us just a little bit of concern, and a little bit of pullback here could occur in that. Got to kind of like the way Cisco held in here yesterday after that big pullback on their earnings. Well, we bought it right back up. And as long as it can hold this area of support in here, I do think it's worth watching. May not want to just chase right in and buy it, because this could pop up into this resistance and then continue to fail. But watch that carefully. If this can break back through this resistance up here and hold, then I think there's that opportunity. Cisco could resume back to the upside. Really like the way Shop is holding in here after this big gap up here on earnings. Just resting in here on this area of support in the chart, right up in here. Watch that carefully, and you might see if those bulls continue to push here, that might push right on through. If this does break this support, we fall into this gap, and be a little bit careful there. A lot of times you can see those protracted pullbacks after a big gap up. If it can't hold above that gap, we could end up filling that gap here in Shopify. So watch that one carefully as well. Boy, we had a lot of stocks moving nicely yesterday, and we even saw some of those energy stocks holding up here pretty well. Now, the majority of energy stocks are struggling in there quite a bit, but there's a few out there that look pretty good. BP is one of those. Now, clearly we have some resistance in this chart to be thinking about, but notice after that big push to the upside, nobody wants to sell this, and we had that good bullish push yesterday trying to break us out up here. So I would watch that carefully in here. If those bulls can continue to hold BP, I think that's worth keeping an eye on. CVX would be another one that continues to hold up really, really well. We're up here testing this major downtrend here in the chart, and remember, CVX had that big acquisition of Hess Corporation in here, and so that possibility that this could push on through there and get moving to the upside does still play out, and I would watch that pretty carefully. If we take a look at those financials in here, now XLF continues to show that big strong bullish move to the upside, but we have stocks in there that are looking pretty darn good. Morgan Stanley, I think, might need a little bit of rest. I like the way Goldman pushed up here and just kind of rested a couple of days. I think there may be some opportunity there in some of those financials. Keep an eye on that. If we take a look at utilities continue this little resting consolidation here after breaking out. If you notice utilities, what we're seeing here is just some extreme bullishness, because my goodness, we're going to need all kinds of energy for AI. So watch that carefully here. A little bit of bullish push, and I could see that continue to extend on to the upside. I'm going to continue to mention stocks like BTU. Now, BTU just went ex-dividend, and we're resting back a little bit here yesterday, but keep an eye on BTU here in coal. looking pretty good. Again, energy is going to be a big deal, and my UEC in here just continues to fly to the upside. I wouldn't chase it here, but I would look for a little bit of rest in that before I would jump in. But I think you could look at stocks like UUUU, CCJ, URA. All of those have that potential that could set up and move to the upside. So keep a close eye on those. Looking pretty good overall. So I apologize, guys. I'm running out of time here this morning. I'm going to cut it off there. But I want to wish you all a fantastic day, and I wish you great results in your trading, and also wish you just a wonderful weekend with your family. Get some rest. Who knows what next week might bring. But as you move through Friday, as always, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you bright and early Monday morning. Take care, everyone. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend.
Black and white candles, my stars in the dark. Price is my king, got that fire and spark. Rideways my ranch on the trader's trail. Trading with heart where the profits prevail.